Yes, Sirski, back in the building. Episode number 5, Looped In Podcast, U.S. Open recap. Wow, Oakmont did not disappoint last week. As I said on Instagram, Oakmont got hands, and it was a fight down to the finish. JJ Spahn with the final blow on 18, 64-foot putt for the dub. I mean, in dramatic fashion, rain down the stretch. It was an entertaining finish, to say the least. I know a lot of commentary about Oakmont, about the rough, about how difficult the course is playing, obviously. 1 under, won the tournament. If you shot even par all 4 rounds, you were in the mix on Sunday. But you know, that's what we expect out of our U.S. Opens. That's what a U.S. Open should be. It should be tough. It should be a test of every aspect of the game. There are a lot of takes on, you know, is it entertaining golf? Is it fun to watch? And, you know, I think for some people it is. This is the lead to me. I think Oakmont was the biggest story of the week and how it played. Obviously, JJ and the win takes the cake, but Oakmont will be back for the 2033 U.S. Open, and I think this one will be tough to forget. It will be tough to beat in the next go-round, but you know, there's 38 other tournaments throughout the year that might score at anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 under. If you want hyper entertaining stadium style screaming, yelling, beer throwing craziness, don't go to Live. Or you can go to Live. You know, that's an opportunity for golf fans. Or you can go to like Waste Management, or you can watch tournaments like the Players Championship. There's golf week in and week out that's going to have that. The US Open is traditionally not that, for reason that the USGA sets courses up to be a very tough test. And I think for the golfer, and anybody new to golf for that regard, if you just can kind of nerd out for a second and really appreciate the game, you see that even world number 1 and world number 2, if they're not on their best game for the week, they don't win. They're not in the mix come Sunday. Luckily enough for Scotty, he was sort of in the mix coming down the stretch. On Sunday, he finished 4 over, obviously 1 under. 1 because JJ holed an absurdly long putt on Sunday. But let's get into it. We'll go through Winner's Circle today. We'll get in through a quick U.S. Open recap. Some hot takes that came true that we made early last week. We'll talk through all of U.S. Open, go through the field, Wyndham Clark and his crazy antics in the locker room, Rory and his mood right now. We'll talk the new PGA. CEO Brian Rowlap was announced earlier today, and we'll talk about the media rights deal, a little bit of the TV product and experience, and then we'll likely get out of here unless something else comes to mind that I want to riff on. But this is episode number 5, and we'll jump into the Winner's Circle right now. So last week on the PGA Tour, Bridgestone Collegiate at Firestone, Steve Cabert, I'm going to go with Cabert. He won at 6 under. For those unfamiliar, the Bridgestone Collegiate is essentially the APGA's version of giving collegiate players, people of color, a chance to play on their way onto the APGA Tour, or even potentially give them opportunity to play on the PGA Tour Pathways program through exemptions or some of the grant programs. So it's a really cool program, sort of similar to the PGA's collegiate programming and what they have and how players can play their way onto the tour every year. And yeah, Cabert came through with the win, so he will have a spot at least on the APGA Tour. Hopefully he does some good things to play his way into a PGA Tour card next year. LPGA Tour, we had the Meyer LPGA Classic. Carlota Saganda won. This is up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She won at 16 under at the Meyer LPGA Classic. On the Epson Tour, also in Michigan last week, the Great Lakes Championship, Riley Smith won at 12 under. And then the DP World Tour KLM Open, Connor Syme at 11 under at the International in Amsterdam. But we are here to talk U.S. Open. My goodness. You know, I watched a lot of golf last week, as per usual, for a major, and it was entertaining at times. It was a little rough some days because yeah, it's slow and guys were in the rough, and there's just not as much exciting shot making as there is week in and week out on tour. And we'll get into the TV product and the whole sort of entertainment value of golf in a second here. But overall, I thought it was great to see a test of golf. I'm a fan of Oakmont. I came out of the tournament, even mid-tournament last week. I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying this. At times it's a little blight, it's a little boring, but for the most part, it was fun watching players have to strike the ball, and for the ball strikers and people who were playing well to make shots and be accurate and make putts. And JJ was doing that the first couple of days. The putter was hot early. His luck was hot early. He holed in off of a chip on hole 1 on the first day, and he was sort of off and running. We did have a couple of hot takes early last week that we put on threads. We're not super active on the app formerly known as Twitter yet. We probably should be, but a lot of my takes are going on threads right now. And I did say I didn't think Scotty was going to win because he was going to struggle with his putter. He did finish 27th in strokes gained putting for the week, which is, middle of the pack. It's actually not bad. I thought he might do a little worse than that, actually. But, it was his putter down the stretch. He 3-putted on 15 for a bogey. He did have some opportunities down the stretch on Sunday to get in the mix. The best round out there was 3 under. There was 2 3-unders on Sunday. Both John Rahm, who birdied the last 3 holes of the tournament, and Rory McIlroy, who out of nowhere shoots 3 under on Sunday, of course. So he did have an opportunity to maybe be in the mix on Sunday. And I mean, the rest of the week, honestly, the driver was the biggest issue for Scotty. So we were a little off there. He did really struggle with the driver off the tee on pretty much every day. I mean, there was footage we shared on Instagram last week. It was all over the place of him being on the range after, I believe it was the Saturday session, just beyond himself, a bit beyond himself. It could have been the Friday session, sort of all blurring together now, but just with his coach, Randy Smith, pointing, screaming, a little bit of yelling, just, you can tell there's a fire with Scotty. That he comes across on course really stoic a lot of times, but you could see the frustration boiling over this week. He was 48th in strokes gained off the tee, 52% of fairways hit, tied for 53rd in fairways hits. That was really what was the larger issue this week, is just not being able to get off the tee, not being fairways, because he was 10th in strokes gained approach. And actually tied for 9th for number of putts at 119. But down the stretch and throughout the week, when you're scrambling and putting for par from 10 and 12 feet, it's a bit tough. And then even on 15 on Sunday, he 3-putted for bogey and just missed a putt that he should never miss, and probably through most circumstances wouldn't. So that was take number 1. Take number 2 was Rory. I thought Rory and the driver would struggle much more than it did this week. And Rory had words for that. Rory did not have a lot of words this week. He only met with the press once. We'll talk about that in a second. But he was 2nd in strokes gained off the tee. He actually drove the ball for the most part pretty well this week. But he was 56 in strokes gained approach, which, is the irons were just off. And yeah, he was having to fight a little bit because, he wasn't all the way in position with the driver every round. Obviously on day 1, it was getting him a little bit in trouble, but finished the week tied for 26, sort of middle of the pack in fairways hit. And the putter was okay too. He was again middle of the pack, 27th for number of putts for the week, and 28th in strokes gained putting. But his strokes gained approach at 56, this year Rory has won because he's been striking it off the tee, and his irons have just been dialed with all the things that he worked on in the offseason. So number 1 in the world and number 2 in the world struggled quite a bit this week in different ways. Oakmont got hands. I do think it tests players in different ways, shapes, and fashions, obviously, as we saw this week. But another take that I really haven't seen that I'll make, you've heard it here first or second, because I think I've actually said this before, is I do think that if there wasn't a fracture in the game of golf, if some of the guys, or the Ortizes of the world, obviously Bryson and Brooks, if some of the live guys were not on live tour and were playing week in and week out with Scotty, I do think Scotty would still be at the top. I do think he would still be at the top of his game and have the most wins. I don't think he would have any less majors at this point in his career. I do think week in, week out, though, he would see more competition. I do think the likes of John Rahm and, some weeks you're going to see a Tyrrell Hatton play really well or a Joaquin Niemann. I do think he would see more competition week in and week out. I don't know if he would have as many PGA Tour wins as he has now, but it's a lot of what ifs. It's a lot of whataboutism. So we won't fully go there, but you just see it in the majors this year. And obviously Scotty did win the PGA Championship, but I do think he would see more competition week in and week out. We'll see if that ever changes. The PGA announced a new CEO today. So some changes in the midst right now, but I do think Scotty still finished 8th for the week. He was still finished top 10 in a major with maybe his C+ game. Putting was not there. Driver surely was way off. So he's always going to be in the mix because he's such a good ball striker and so good at golf, period. I mean, we could go through every aspect of his game, but yeah, it was interesting to see both Scotty and Rory struggle a bit. Rory's a different story and where his motivation is, but let's talk about JJ Spawn, the Filipino and Mexican American from LA who grew up blue collar lifestyle. I believe went to San Diego State University. Thought in the last few years he was going to lose his tour card. Found something in his belief system with his coaches and went into the Players Championship this year with a chance to win, really, and lost to Rory in a playoff, but has really showed up this season. And JJ proved that this week. He's at the top of his game. His ball striking is super solid. He's shown improvement in that year over year. And the putter has always been the question. And then shows up lab putters, lie angle balance putters. And wow, I mean, a legendary lab putters. Let's just take a step back for a second. Lab is on a generational run right now, period. They have the top OEMs like Callaway and Odyssey copying them. They've been on fire, and you've seen them more on the tour over the last couple of years, a bit more on the senior PGA Tour as well. But for JJ to make that putt in that fashion with his DF3 on Sunday, it's just, you couldn't write a better story for him to win the US Open, let alone with a lab putter, let alone with the tear that they've been on this year. Adam Scott, too, obviously has the broomstick lab, the Oz putter, their Oz 1 that he helped just design. He was in the mix on Sunday as well, was, in the top 4 until late, made a couple mistakes down the stretch, but shout out to Lab Golf because they are on a generational legendary run right now, and it's really been fun to watch. Full transparency, I own a Lab too, and I really do enjoy it. Buying a Lab's not going to automatically make you a better putter. You still have to practice, but it's been really fun to watch Lab's growth over the last couple of years, and they're just on a tear and really cool brand and company. So shout out to them and JJ getting the dub. Going down the leaderboard a little bit. Yeah, speaking of the Adam Scotts of the world, just could not hold it together. I do think the break really hurt in a lot of ways. Just so they went through a rain delay. If anybody who's listening did not watch any of the US Open, there was a rain delay for a couple hours in which they played the 2008 US Open that Tiger won, which there was a lot of commentary around that, which was kind of funny, but was really pulling for Adam Scott. He just made some mistakes down the stretch. I do think the reset probably hurt just in terms of momentum and just overall, you're sitting there thinking about it. He did have a bogey on 11 on the back 9 and then finished the last 4 holes, with last 5 holes with bogey, double bogey, par, bogey. So just played himself out, ejected out of the tournament in the last 5 holes down the stretch on Sunday. And the same for Sam Burns. I mean, poor man Burns was battling on the front, was still in the lead going into the back 9. And, we're going to talk about the ruling that he got. So there was a standing water ruling on 15. The ruling typically is if there's there's standing water or there's water around your ball, that you can move the ball, because essentially it's impacting your ability to swing. Don't quote me on the exact rule. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen here in the post edit. But yeah, there's going to be just some discrepancy around that for a bit. If he should have gotten relief from that position, he called in 2 different referees, 2 different folks to come in and look at it. And both said, no, sorry. The first person said you don't have enough water around where you're actually standing, that there's not enough water coming up. And then the second ruling official came in and essentially made the same call. I do think part of it is, if they do make that call, that they've got to make that call for a lot of other people down, the stretch of the tournament after it's rained. And yeah, tough call. You got to play it as it lies there, and you've got to rise to the occasion. Optionally, ended up double bogeying 15. He pulled that 5-iron left after the green, and did not get up and down for par. He ended up double bogeying and then bogeyed the par 3 16th as well. Got a birdie back on 17, but then, he had to be reeling, bogeyed 18 as well. So a bit tough for him. Jon Rahm, as mentioned, came down the stretch with 3 birdies. Tyrell Hatton was in the mix for a bit, but he was bogey down 17 and 18. There was a part of me that was like, man, I hope Hatton does not win this tournament. Carlos Ortiz too was in the mix going into the back 9, birdied 11, double bogeyed 15, and needed a miracle down the stretch as well to get through. Victor Hovland. Let's talk about Victor Hovland for a second. Was really struggling with the driver all week. He was 38th in strokes gained off the tee. There was footage of him on the driving range late Saturday, working on that driver, just ripping drives on the range, trying to get it figured out. And, just was not able to be as accurate as he needed to be off the tee. It's amazing iron shots this week, and much improved from a strokes gained short game standpoint. In recent years, he has really struggled with his short game and has done a lot of work to get his short game in the right place. So it was really positive to see him second for strokes gained short game. The putter ultimately, though, was part of the demise. He was 56th in strokes gained putting and could not make some putts down the stretch, could not make some things happen there as well, but really showed up, really showed a lot of heart, really showed that he, when at the top of his game, will be in the mix down a Sunday. Bobby McIntyre finished second place at +1. I can't really remark on his round because they didn't really show much of Bobby all week. They showed a little bit of more of him on the back 9 of his last round, because all of a sudden he was in the mix, and it would have been difficult, I do think, for commentary on his round or his play throughout the week. Even looking through on the USG's website, you can go back through and sort of like a Masters or a lot of other tournaments nowadays, you can go shot by shot through most of the rounds. And yeah, it wasn't until round 4 that you can literally go shot for shot, hole for hole with Bobby McIntyre. He's got 1, 2, 5, 6 holes that they covered for him in round 3, a handful of holes that they covered for him in round 2, and only 5 holes that they covered for him in round 1, in which he was only 1 over and was really, for the most part, still in the mix coming out of round 1. So yeah, in the mix, he had a great reaction after JJ hold the putt, was applauding it. Tyrrell Hatton's reaction too, if you haven't seen it, check that out. He just was like, holy cow. He was doing his post round press conference and was watching as JJ hold the putt and just smiled. And he was like, that was incredible. That was incredible. What a brilliant way to win a US Open. So all in all, Oakmont has hands. It was a really entertaining week, and I think in a lot of ways, and ultimately delivered down the stretch. We got exactly what we wanted. The drama, the rain, the people falling out of the lead, Sam Burns and Adam Scott falling out of the lead. It was up in the air for a second there early in the back 9 after the rain delay, and was a dramatic finish with JJ coming through again with a legendary putt that will be played for the rest of time. And I ran around my living room screaming as that putt went in, because he needed a 2-putt to win. And all you're thinking from 64 feet is don't 3-putt, right? That's all you're thinking, is just like lag this close enough that you don't have a knee knocker for your second putt. And sure enough, he holed it and will go down along with lab putters as one of the greatest putts all time, especially in a US Open. Wyndham Clark, a lot of news coming out, coverage coming out about Wyndham Clark, that he smashed through lockers, which is just absurd. Like, I'm putting a picture up here. It's just like, what's going on? There has been some anger management issues with Wyndham Clark, and the president of Oakmont was on TV on Monday saying that they were working with the USGA to figure out, best case scenario moving forward, and if there are any repercussions and so on and so forth. It's so uncalled for. Like, that's somebody's locker. That's a member's locker, two members' lockers that you just destroyed because you were frustrated about how you play. It's just like, bro, get it together. Like, what are we even talking about? What are we doing? So that was a bit of story coming out of the US Open, but otherwise, what a week. As I said, the first few days, a little sort of, boring here and there early in the rounds, some excitement late, but it surely delivered late round on Sunday. We got everything we could have asked for out of the US Open, including, some just overall commentary from Rory this week. Listen, Rory's had a rough go since he won the Masters, and he reached a peak. He's not had much time off. Looking up after Tiger won his first Grand Slam, I think he had 3 or 4 weeks off before he played his next tournament. Rory was right back in 2 weeks later playing he did play in the Zurich Classic with Shane Lowry a couple weeks after the Masters. Obviously, a couple weeks after that, he's into the PGA Championship, the whole driver issue. He's frustrated with the press because of the driver leak. He didn't want to talk to the press at all, primarily probably because he was, coupled with him playing bad, also just frustrated about the whole driver issue. As mentioned last week in his post-round press conference after Saturday, I don't think he talked to the press the first 2 days. Again, I do feel for Rory. I think we ask a lot of our champions, of our GOATs, you just won this amazing accomplishment, an accomplishment that only a few other players have accomplished in their career. You're literally GOAT status now, and we want you to do it again. We want you to be like Tiger or be like MJ and, go win another chip, go win another tournament, and just continue. And I don't think there's enough grace or space given for what it takes to win on the PGA Tour right now, but also just letting the guy be for a little bit and letting him sort of come down from the mountain that he was on. Now, he hasn't done himself any favors in terms of just the mood, the throwing of the club at the US Open on Sunday. He threw a club, it hit his bag and bounced back at him, and he caught it. Like, there has been an element of, for lack of a better term, moodiness, and just how that can sort of play out in the storyline. But I do feel for Rory. Rory's given a lot to the game. He's given, so much in terms of his press availability. He was leading the tour when all the live news broke as the face of the tour, very active in trying to take a stance and make sure that the tour was still the best golf product out there after the split. Obviously got a bit stabbed in the back with that whole scenario and Monahan and the whole Monahan live golf debacle that ended up playing out. He did start TGL, which again, by all metrics, I do think had a successful first season this year. So I just think Rory's heads, he needs some time off. You just made the best. You just accomplished the best. You just accomplished your career goal. You're now goated, and you need some time off. You need vacation. You need to sort of remove yourself from the public eye for a little bit and take some downtime and recalibrate. So I do feel for him. Roy has given a lot to the game, and I think we owe it to him to give him some grace and some space to figure out what's next. And he did say if he can't get up for the British Open and be prepared to play for that, then what else can excite him? So we'll see how he shows up next month for the British Open. But, I do understand why he's struggling a little bit right now we all want Rory to play well. We all want him to be at his best and to continue to be able to go to bat with Scotty, and that maybe have some rivalry, and the PGA entertaining in that way. Your tour is only as good as, or your sports league is only as good as the players, right? Like that's why Survive to Drive, or Drive to Survive rather, for F1 has become so compelling, because they told driver stories. That's why Full Swing became compelling, because we get these more in-depth stories around players, and we're able to see a bit more who they are, and for lack of a better term, become more emotionally attached, or more, we can root for somebody in a different way than just someone who shows up like a robot every week and says all the right things and shows no emotion. So love him or hate him, Rory has done a lot for the game and considerable amount of respect. And I do agree that we, again, just need to give players some space and let him just be who he is for a little bit. And hopefully he finds that dog again and can show up at the British Open in good form. Last but not least, this week in a quick show, the PGA announced, and this is why sometimes we take a little time after a major championship. Take a deep breath, let all the dust settle, cross our T's, dot our I's, look over a few things, because Tuesday morning, June 7th to be specific, the PGA did announce a new CEO, Brian Rolap. He was formerly the chief media and business officer for the NFL. He was massive in all the NFL's TV rights deals over the last few years. He was rumored that he was in position to take over for Roger Goodell, but Roger, it looks like, is staying around a little bit longer, and the PGA came a knock-in. I do think he is going to be a great asset for the PGA. TV rights deal expires in 2030. Media rights will be up then, and it's going to be a different landscape in a few years. Golf at large, if we look at what we've been talking about, golf, where the growth of golf has come from, that, in the next 5 years, the landscape of golf, at least outside of the PGA Tour, I think will look a lot different. As mentioned last week when we were doing our US Open qualifying coverage, as mentioned again last week, as Mike Wan, the CEO of the PGA Tour, the CEO for the USGA, mentioned that there's 24 million people that are interested in playing golf right now, that 40% of those people are women, people of color, and youth, that the growth of golf is coming from those categories, those demographics. So that's how the landscape is shifting. Again, shout out to the creators, and shout out to, the APGA Tour, and shout out to Underrated Tour. All these facets of the game that are happening right now. Eastside, we called a bunch of people out last week on Instagram. Go take a look. But that's the shifting landscape of the game, and I do think in 5 years that the landscape will be totally different than it is now. If we look at how the tour's integrated creator golf into the landscape, if we look at even how Live Golf has integrated creators and YouTubers into their tour. So I do think the landscape is going to look absolutely nothing like it does now. And I do think as the tour approaches the media rights deal, they're going to have some firepower, because there's going to be such an interest in golf as golf continues to grow. With that being said, I do think the TV product does struggle. I mean, prime example, if Robert McIntyre would have won this week, we didn't see much of him. It's really struggled to see a lot of golf. The Masters is able to do that because they hold the rights for their tournament, and they do a really good job with ESPN and NBC to make sure that they get the most coverage, and that they can really hold back on the ad revenue and not have so many ads running during coverage. So we see more golf during the Masters, almost during more than any other tournament, because of their ability to hold back on the ad inventory. So I do think the TV product needs to change. But listen, I've worked in golf for a little bit. I worked at one of the largest golf agencies in the world. I do have an understanding of how that ecosystem works, who pays the bills for the PGA Tour. And anytime you're watching a tournament and you see those large hospitality tents on 18, or the arena hole at Waste Management, that's who's paying the bills. That those corporations that are buying that hospitality, that are sponsoring tournaments, that's who's paying the bills. And the large demographic that is watching golf on TV still is just, it's middle-aged white men, and the product hasn't really shifted. I think Liv has tried to do some things that haven't worked. I think TGL is really compelling because the golf is just a lot quicker and you're in a controlled environment. So the commentary that you can have around what's happening and the things that you can do can be a bit more entertaining. But I don't really have a solution. I do think inviting the creators creates a compelling component to how golf can be viewed, but even that has its limitations in a lot of ways, just because some creators just aren't good golfers, and the actual golf isn't entertaining. They're good creators, and that's why they're making content. We will see. I do think there's going to be a balance of what happens professionally in the game and what that product looks like, and what happens off course, and what creator golf looks like, and what happens through the diversity of golf, what happens with indoor golf and simulators, what happens with like what the homie Modi is doing out in LA and Swing, and what the homie Ray and Hype Golf is doing with Hype Golf, or we look at what Malvin's doing with Bucket Club. Like, those community aspects of what's happening outside of the PGA Tour will continue to drive every single aspect of the game, and continue to make the game cool, continue to make the game accessible, and continue to make the game, to be honest, culturally relevant, which is what it needs more than anything else. And if that can continue to change who's playing the game, if we can get pros and a more diverse landscape of professionals on tour, on Korn Ferry, that will change who views golf. If we look at who was watching golf when Tiger was in his hay, the demographics looked a little bit different. I'm not saying they were completely different than they are now, but there was a younger audience. There was a more diverse audience because there was somebody that looked like black and brown people that was playing the game. So I do think, as the NBA is, as the NFL is, you're only as good as the athletes that you have on field. And the PGA Tour, as I remarked, for the US Open, still has some work to do. Golf still has some work to do at the highest level to make sure that those opportunities are provided, so that the game reflects the changing landscape. And geez, how many times did I say landscape over the last 15 minutes? But you get the point. I don't think the TV product will change until we have a more diverse professional. I don't think the TV product will change until we have a more diverse professional. I don't think the TV product will change until we have more diversity on tour, and the athletes reflect, a wider variety of personality, of people of color, of style, of, even the energy that Tiger played with is not something that we see often anymore. The pointing at the hole, the fist pump, the swag, the club twirl, like there's nobody has that sort of aura on course, and it's needed. It's needed if golf is going to move into the next phase and evolve into a sport that can be globally relevant for years to come. That is all we have today, and thanks for tuning in. It will be interesting to see how Brian Rolap kicks off. Jay Monahan retires after 2026, and the changes abound. Golf is in a really good place. That's why we're here, trying to evolve the voice of golf and break down the game in many ways, shapes, and forms. Please, if you like this, share with a friend, subscribe, send it to your mama. I don't care who. We really appreciate you. I really appreciate you tuning in. Stay tuned to the Instagram and YouTube. We've got some new concept shows, things that we're working on that we're going to get ready to launch. A concept called Dialed In, which really dives into carry distance and looks at launch monitors, and another episode and long form content that I can't quite talk about yet that we're in the production stages for. So please stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in once again. Really appreciate it. What a time. Talk to you soon. Peace.